The first thing you notice is how quiet it is for that time of morning. 6:18 a.m. The sky outside has not fully made up its mind yet. It is not night anymore, but it is not really day either. Just that flat, dull blue that makes the whole street look unfinished, like the world has been loaded halfway and then paused. You are standing near the counter, one hand resting on the edge of a plastic tray, staring at a total you already knew was going to hurt before the cashier even said it out loud. You have seen this number in different forms all week. On the banking app, on the overdue notice, on the balance that keeps shrinking faster than your life gives you time to fix it. Your fingers tap once against the tray, then they stop. Because there is no point rushing a moment that is not going to change. For a second, you think about putting something back. Just one item. Something small enough to pretend you are being responsible. A drink. A sandwich. Maybe the thing you picked up only because your stomach has been empty since yesterday afternoon. But even as the thought comes, you already know the truth. It would not matter. Not in any real way. The total would still be too high. The account would still be too low. The rest of your life would still be waiting outside this place with its hand out, asking for money you do not have. And then you feel the space behind you change. Not loudly, not dramatically. No footsteps that announce themselves. No sudden movement. No movie moment. Just a shift. A small pocket of silence that was not there before. The kind your body notices before your mind can explain it. A voice comes from somewhere just over your shoulder, not friendly. Not aggressive, just certain. That is what makes it land. It does not try to sell you anything. It does not ask if you are interested. It does not waste time pretending this is a normal conversation between strangers at 6:18 in the morning. It gives you a location, a time, one simple thing to do. So simple that your brain accepts the shape of it before your instincts get a chance to push back. You do not turn around right away, because you understand something without fully admitting it. The second you look, this stops being a strange sentence in the air. It becomes real. And right now, for one more second, it still feels like something you can ignore, something you can walk away from, something that will disappear if you keep looking at the counter, at the receipt printer, at the cashier's hand hovering near the screen. Then he says the number, not loudly, not slowly, just once. And that is the part that lands inside you, because it fits too perfectly. It fits into the exact gap you have been trying not to look at, the gap between what you have and what you need. The gap between the life you are supposed to be building and the one that keeps collapsing back into the same problem every month. The gap where discipline stops being enough, where hard work stops being enough, where being careful, being patient, being responsible, being a good person stops paying the bill on time. You finally turn. You do not ask what this is. Not because you are brave, not because you do not care, but because some part of you already knows that the answer would not change anything. The details would only make it heavier. So you say yes in the smallest way possible. A nod, barely visible. Small enough that later, if you had to, you could tell yourself it was not really a decision. And that is how it starts. Not with a moment that feels evil, not with some grand leap into darkness, not with you waking up one morning and deciding to become someone else. It starts with a choice that feels practical, efficient, almost reasonable. And that is the first thing the system teaches you before you even know you are inside it. There are ways to make money that do not ask who you are. They only ask whether you are willing. Level 1. Survival. You don't choose the system. The system finds you. It is 9:47 at night, and your room feels smaller than it did this morning. The air is stale, the kind of air that has been breathed too many times. The fan above you clicks every time it completes a rotation, a soft mechanical sound that keeps reminding you how old everything in this room is. The mattress sinks too much on one side. There is a half-empty bottle of water on the floor. A receipt from earlier is folded near your shoe. Your phone is lying on the bed beside you, screen dark, battery barely holding on, like even the device is tired of being part of your life. Then it vibrates. One short buzz. The number is unfamiliar. No name, no photo. No history, just a signal. And the strange thing is, you already know what it is. You do not sit up right away. You let it ring once more, as if delaying the moment could somehow create a different version of it. As if the same message might become less serious if you make it wait. It does not. It never does. When you finally pick up, the instructions are short, specific, but not detailed. A location, a time, a simple action. Nothing about it sounds complicated. That is the point. At this level, the work is never presented to you as a doorway into a different life. It is presented as one task, one errand, one thing that can be done quickly and then put behind you. You go, you do what you were told, you leave. No one thanks you. No one explains anything. No one stays longer than they need to. And then the money appears. Not as an idea, not as a promise, not as some future opportunity wrapped in motivation and empty advice, as cash, as something you can hold. Something that folds into your pocket and changes the weight of it. Something physical, something real, something that makes every other part of your life feel slower, heavier, and almost insulting by comparison. Because outside this world, money comes with waiting. Applications, approvals, hours, supervisors, schedules, taxes, rejections. Someone deciding whether you are worth the number they put next to your name. But here, money comes fast, quietly, without a speech. Without asking you to believe in yourself. And when you are living at the edge, speed starts to feel like mercy. That is the trap. Not glamour, not excitement, not power, mercy. The kind of mercy that shows up right when your rent is late. When the bill collector calls again, when your car makes a sound you cannot afford to diagnose, when your mother asks if you are okay and you say yes too quickly. Days begin to blur together. You start to recognize the rhythm before the message even arrives. The pauses between tasks, the way your body stays slightly alert even when you are supposed to be resting. The way silence starts to mean something. Before this, silence was just silence. Now it has weight. Now it can mean waiting. It can mean warning. It can mean something is moving somewhere and you have not been told yet. You do not need to understand the system to function inside it. In fact, understanding would only slow you down. That is the first rule you learn without anyone saying it out loud. Questions are not just unnecessary, they are dangerous. Because the moment you start asking why, you step outside the role you were given. And outside that role, there is no protection, no structure, no place for you to stand. So you stop asking, not all at once. At first, the questions still come. They rise in your throat when you are waiting on a corner too long. They flicker in your head when someone gives you instructions but leaves out the part that would make them make sense. But you learn to swallow them. You learn that not knowing is part of the job. You learn that ignorance can feel like safety when the alternative is having information you cannot unhear. And something else replaces the questions. Not confidence, not control. Habit. You start checking your phone without thinking. At dinner, in the bathroom, in the middle of a conversation you are only half listening to. You tell yourself you are just being careful, but the truth is uglier than that. Part of you wants the message to come. Because when the message comes, you know what to do next. And when you know what to do next, you do not have to sit alone with the larger fear that your normal life has no answer for you. That is the part nobody prepares you for. The work itself is simple. The money is immediate. But the feeling it creates is what keeps you in place. Because for the first time in a long time, something responds when you move. Something pays when you act. Something gives you proof that your body, your time, your obedience can still create a result. And when you have spent long enough feeling invisible to the regular world, even a dangerous system can start to feel like recognition. That is the truth reversal of survival. The thing that looks like a bad choice from the outside can feel like the first choice you have had in months. Because at this level, nothing is driven by power. It is driven by the absence of options. And when you no longer need to be told exactly what to do next, when your body starts moving before your mind objects, that is when they start giving you something bigger. Level 2. Stability. Predictable money, invisible work. It is 2:13 in the morning, and you are standing under a narrow awning while rain taps softly against the metal above your head. The street is almost empty. A bus passes with no passengers near the back. A traffic light changes for cars that are not there. Somewhere down the block, a sign buzzes in the wet air, flickering just enough to make the whole corner feel tired. Your prepaid phone lights up in your palm at the exact minute you expected it to. That is new. In the beginning, everything felt random. A message came, you moved. You waited. You got paid. Nothing had shape yet. Nothing had rhythm. You were just reacting to whatever came next, like a person trying to keep his head above water without knowing where the shore is. But now there is a pattern. Certain nights, certain blocks, certain pauses that always mean the same thing. Certain people who never say much, but whose silence has become familiar. You start to know when your phone will vibrate before it does. You start to feel the shape of the work before anyone explains it. And that is the first version of stability this world gives you. Not safety, not peace, not trust. Just rhythm, a pattern, a structure. Something predictable enough that your nervous system starts to organize itself around it. That is how this level feels at first. Like your life has stopped spinning. You are not rich. You are not important. You are not protected in any real way. But you are no longer completely guessing. And when you have been living with financial chaos long enough, predictability can feel almost like salvation. You know when money is coming. You know what has to happen before it gets there. You know which bills can be handled this week and which ones have to be pushed a little further out. You know which conversations at home will be easier because there is food in the fridge again. The money helps. That is the part that makes everything harder to question. A bill gets paid, the lights stay on, gas goes into the car. Someone you love breathes easier for one night and does not ask too carefully how it happened. And when nobody asks, you tell yourself the silence is kindness. You tell yourself you are protecting them. You tell yourself the details would only scare people who cannot help you anyway. But silence does not stay empty. It starts building walls. You become useful because you do not interrupt the rhythm. You show up without needing a second message. You leave without making anyone repeat themselves. You do not talk too much. You do not look too long. You do not ask questions that make people remember your face. That is the hidden rule of this level. Your value is not speed. It is not courage. It is not being fearless. Your value is being forgettable. So you learn to move through rooms like you were never really there. Plain clothes, low voice, eyes that do not stay on anything too long. You let people underestimate you because being underestimated feels safer than being noticed. You learn which jacket looks ordinary, which shoes make too much noise, which routes feel exposed, which corners have too much light. You become a student of things normal people never think about. And slowly, your life splits in two. There is the version of you people can ask about. The version that says you are helping someone, picking up extra work, staying out late because money is tight, doing what you have to do. Then there is the version that checks the phone under the table, deletes messages without thinking, knows exactly which streets feel wrong after midnight, knows that some names should not be saved, knows that some calls should never be returned from the same place twice. The strange part is that both versions feel like you. That is what makes it exhausting. You are not pretending all day in some theatrical way. You are just editing, leaving out small pieces. Changing the order of events, replacing truth with something lighter, something people can accept without leaning in too closely. And every time you do it, the lie becomes easier. One lie becomes a routine. One routine becomes a second life. Before long, the people closest to you know less about your days than strangers do. Not because they stop loving you, because you stop giving them enough of yourself to recognize. That is the emotional bill of stability. You finally get rhythm, but you lose transparency. You finally get predictable money, but the version of you earning it has nowhere clean to exist. Then one night, the message does not just tell you where to go. It assumes you will already be there. No explanation, no checking, no extra instruction, just a time and a gap in the system that has your shape inside it. And when other people begin building their timing around your presence, you understand what has changed. You are no longer being tested. You are being counted on. And when you become reliable, they start placing you closer to where everything actually happens. Level 3. Competence. You start understanding the game. It is 4:22 in the afternoon and the sun is sitting low enough to hit the glass storefronts across the street. Every time a door opens, hard light flashes into your eyes. The sidewalk is loud, cars braking, music leaking from an open window, someone laughing too hard near the corner, someone else arguing into a phone like the whole block needs to hear every word. A delivery guy cuts between two parked cars. A woman walks past with grocery bags cutting red lines into her fingers. A kid on a bike moves too fast through the crowd, and nobody looks up for more than half a second. You have been standing in the same area long enough that people have stopped seeing you. That used to make you uncomfortable. Now it is useful. At first, invisibility felt like humiliation, like proof that you did not matter. Now it feels like cover. You begin to notice things you would have missed before. The person who walks too slowly but looks everywhere. The car that circles twice without parking. The customer who acts casual but keeps touching the same pocket. The familiar face that arrives with unfamiliar energy. The man who is trying too hard to look relaxed. The woman who leaves faster than her reason for leaving. The pause before a sentence. The extra glance toward the street. The weight in someone's shoulders when fear and need are fighting inside the same body. At this level, the work changes. On the surface, it still looks simple. People come, people leave. Money changes hands somewhere inside the flow of the day. Nothing about it appears complicated from the outside. To anyone passing by, life is just happening. A sidewalk. A storefront. A corner. A normal afternoon. But from where you stand, the job is not the exchange. The job is reading people before they become problems. That is the hidden rule. The transaction is the smallest part. The real work happens in the seconds before it. In the hesitation. In the eyes. In the way someone holds their shoulders when they are pretending not to be afraid. You start to understand why some people survive here longer than others. It is not because they are louder. It is not because they act harder. It is not because they make everyone around them uncomfortable just to prove they are not scared. The ones who last are usually quieter than people expect. They notice the temperature of a situation before it changes. They can feel when a room tightens. They know when to move and when stillness is safer. They know the difference between a person who is nervous and a person who is about to become a problem. And you are becoming one of them. That should feel like progress. It should feel like you are getting sharper, smarter, more valuable. And in one sense you are. But the truth is, competence does not only make you better. It makes the world colder. Because now you see too much. You see who is desperate. You see who is lying. You see who has already lost control and is just moving through the day on whatever need is pulling them forward. You see the damage around the edges of the system. You see how people justify things when the pressure gets high enough. You see how quickly dignity becomes negotiable when money is late, when fear is close, when a person has run out of clean options. And the worst part is not that it shocks you. The worst part is that it stops shocking you. A face looks worse than it did last week. A voice shakes harder than it did yesterday. Someone makes a promise they will never keep. Someone says they are fine in a way that tells you they are already falling apart. And instead of feeling something clean and human, you calculate what it means for the work. That is the emotional bill of competence. The better you get, the less innocent your attention becomes. Your eyes stop being just eyes. They become tools. They measure risk. They measure weakness. They measure timing. And after a while, you cannot turn that off just because you are outside the work. You do it. Getting better does not make you free. It makes the system more visible. And once you can see it, ordinary life starts to feel staged, fragile, almost naive. Then, one afternoon, something feels wrong before anyone tells you. No message, no warning, no obvious sign. Just a small change in the rhythm. A person where they should not be. A pause that lasts half a second too long. A familiar pattern breaking. Your body catches it before your mind names it. And the day keeps moving like nothing happened. Cars still pass. The storefront glass still throws light into your eyes. Someone still laughs too loudly at the corner. But later, someone looks at you differently. Not with kindness, not with warmth. With recognition. And that recognition is heavier than praise. Because it means they saw what you saw. They know you did not just follow an instruction. You understood the pattern. You acted before the system had to tell you what to do. And when you understand the system well enough to act without being told, you are no longer just surviving inside it. You are beginning to control a piece of it. Level 4, leverage. You stop doing, you start assigning. It is 11:36 at night, and the room you are in does not belong to you, but it has started to feel like it does. That is how strange your life has become. You can sit in rooms you do not own, and still feel the weight of responsibility settle on the furniture around you. The light above is warm, almost soft, but it does nothing to relax your shoulders. There is a table in front of you, a cheap one, scratched near the edge. One leg slightly uneven. On top of it is a sheet of paper with names written by hand. Not neatly, not in any official format. No columns, no labels, no clean structure. Just a list that only you understand. Names, times, small marks beside some of them. The kind of marks that would mean nothing to anyone else, but to you, they carry weight. You are no longer the one moving. You are the one deciding who moves. At first, it feels like relief. That is the honest part. No more waiting in the cold for hours. No more standing in one place long enough to be noticed. No more doing every small task with your own body. You sit. You plan. You send people where they need to go. Messages leave your phone, and things happen in places you are not physically present. That feels like progress. That feels like control. It feels like the thing everyone wants in some form. To stop trading your body for every result. To stop being the person who has to show up everywhere. To make one decision and watch 3 things happen from it. That is leverage. And from the outside, leverage always looks like freedom. But control here is different from what you imagined. Because the moment you stop doing the work yourself, the system expands beyond your direct sight. Each person you assign becomes an extension of your judgment. Every decision you make now travels through someone else's hands. Someone else's timing. Someone else's fear. Someone else's misunderstanding. Someone else's need to prove something. And that is the rule no one explains clearly because most people only learn it after it has already cost them. Leverage does not free you. It multiplies your exposure. A mistake is no longer just a mistake, it becomes a chain. One wrong assumption, one person trusted a little too quickly, one instruction delivered too loosely, one message read with the wrong tone. One delay that looks harmless until it reaches the next person, and the next, and the next. Suddenly the problem is not where you are, it is somewhere else, already moving, already growing, already becoming your responsibility before you even know its full shape. So you start checking everything. You replay conversations in your head, you question tone, timing, hesitation. You ask for confirmations you did not need before. You read messages twice, then a third time. Then you stare at a short reply for too long because something about it feels slightly off, and you cannot tell whether that feeling is instinct or paranoia. You learn how people respond when they are confident. You learn how they respond when they are pretending. You learn who over-explains, who disappears, who gets defensive too quickly, who says all good when nothing is good. You begin to see cracks where there used to be smooth surfaces. Trust becomes something you measure, not something you give. That is the emotional bill of leverage. You get more reach but less peace. You can do more, but you can no longer assume that what happens under your name is actually under your control. And that changes how you see people. Before, a person was helpful or not helpful, reliable or unreliable. Now every person becomes a moving variable, a small system inside the larger system. A set of habits, fears, incentives, pressures, weaknesses. You stop asking, can this person do the job? You start asking, what happens to this person when the job goes wrong? That question becomes part of you. It follows you into rooms that have nothing to do with work. You hear a friend make a casual promise, and some part of your mind watches how easily he says it. You see someone avoid a simple question, and you notice it too sharply. You start collecting tiny signals from people who never agreed to be measured. That is, the part leverage takes from you. It does not only change how work moves, it changes how you listen. Then one night something small goes wrong. Not loud, not dramatic. Not the kind of event anyone would describe as a collapse. Just enough. A detail missed, a timing off, a person not where they were supposed to be, a message answered too late. And the consequence lands on you before you even understand the full shape of the mistake. You feel it immediately, not as fear, as weight, a pressure behind the ribs, a coldness in the stomach, a sudden awareness that distance does not protect you from responsibility. Because now you understand something clearly. You are responsible for things you did not physically do, and there is no clean way to step back from that. From that point on, you do not just assign tasks. You assign risk. You decide who carries which part of the system. You decide whose weakness can be tolerated, whose mistake can be absorbed, whose ambition can be useful, whose fear can become dangerous. That is the truth reversal of leverage. The thing that looks like freedom is actually the moment your life becomes tied to more people than ever before. And when the system starts to move without needing your hands on it, when your decisions travel farther than your body can reach, that is when you begin to think you have won. But what you have really built is not freedom yet. It is a machine. And the next question is whether that machine can run without you. Level 5. Scale. The machine runs without you. It is 7:05 in the evening, and you are sitting alone in your car with the engine off. The dashboard is still lit, casting a faint glow across your hands. The windows have started to fog slightly at the edges. Outside, people are moving through the parking lot with grocery bags, takeout containers, work uniforms, tired faces. Normal lives passing by in small pieces. There is food in your lap, already cold, still half untouched. You do not remember when you bought it. You remember paying. You remember putting the bag on the passenger seat. You remember telling yourself you would eat in 5 minutes. But somewhere between one message, one call, one update, and one more thing that could not wait, the food became part of the background. Your phone is quiet. Not because nothing is happening, because everything is. That is the strange silence of this level. In the beginning, silence meant waiting. Then it meant risk. Now it means the machine is running without needing to call you every second. At this level, movement no longer needs your physical presence. Things operate across multiple points at once. Different locations, different people. Different timings that overlap in ways you used to track manually. You used to know every face, every route, every small delay, every weak spot. Now you know the shape of the system, but not every detail inside it. And that is what scale really feels like. Not excitement, not victory, not the clean, cinematic version of building something larger than yourself. It feels like sitting in a parked car with cold food in your lap while parts of your life move faster than your ability to see them. The numbers are bigger now. The flow is faster. The gaps between actions shrink until the entire system feels like one continuous motion. Money moves in ways that would have felt impossible back when you were standing under that awning at 2:13 in the morning, waiting for one message to tell you where to go. Tasks are completed before you even think to check on them. Problems are handled before they reach your phone. People you barely know make decisions in your orbit because someone they trust told them you matter. From the outside, this looks like power. It looks like you have finally escaped the lowest form of pressure. You are not the person waiting anymore. You are not the person running anymore. You are not the one standing in the cold or reading faces on a sidewalk or sending every instruction yourself. The system moves. The system produces. The system repeats. And for a while, that feels like winning. But from where you sit, it also feels like distance, because the larger it becomes, the less you actually see. You no longer know every detail. You no longer recognize every face. You no longer hear every conversation from the first mouth. You hear about things, reports, summaries, patterns, versions of reality that have already passed through other people before they arrive in front of you. And that is the hidden rule of scale. Scale does not give you more control. It takes away your visibility. At the lower levels, your problem was that everything depended on you. Your body, your time, your attention, your willingness to show up. Now the problem has reversed. Too much happens without you, and the thing that once felt like freedom starts to feel like exposure. You built something that continues even when you are not watching it. But if it continues without you, it can also change without you. That thought settles in quietly. Not enough to stop you, just enough to follow you. You start to notice the difference in how your mind works. Before, you reacted to what you saw. A face, a pause. A person standing where they should not stand. A shift in tone. A rhythm breaking in front of you. Now you react to what you are told, and every layer between you and the truth becomes a place where something can bend. A person can leave something out. Another person can soften the language. Someone can panic quietly and call it a delay. Someone can make a mistake and pass it forward as if it were already handled. By the time information reaches you, it is no longer raw. It has been touched, shaped, edited. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes just because people are people, and people tell stories in the version that protects them first. That is the emotional bill of scale. You gain reach, but you lose direct contact with reality. You have more moving pieces, but fewer clean answers. You have a larger system, but you must trust smaller fragments of information. And the more the system grows, the more you realize that size does not remove fear. It changes the kind of fear you live with. At level 1, fear was immediate. Can I pay this? Can I survive this week? Can I get through tonight? At this level, fear is distributed. It exists in 10 places at once. In people you do not know well enough. In decisions you did not personally make. In messages that arrive too clean. In problems that seem solved a little too quickly. Then one day, something breaks. Not where you are, somewhere else. That is what makes it worse. A problem forms outside your sight and reaches you already in motion. By the time you hear about it, it has passed through multiple hands, multiple choices, multiple chances to be corrected. Multiple people who each thought it was someone else's responsibility to say something sooner. And now it belongs to you. You sit there staring at a screen that does not give you the full picture. The glow from the dashboard is still on your hands. The food is still in your lap. Your mouth is dry. Your body is still, but your mind is moving through every possible point where this could have been stopped. Who saw it first? Who waited? Who misunderstood? Who protected themselves? Who thought you already knew? That is when it becomes clear. You built a system that no longer needs you to function, but still depends on you to absorb the consequences. That is the truth reversal of scale. The dream is that the machine runs without you. The bill is that the machine can also fail without you. And from that moment forward, the question changes. It is no longer about making it bigger. It is about whether you control the people inside it, or whether they begin to control you. Level 6. Power. People become the risk. It is 1:14 in the morning, and the room you are in looks like it was never meant for this kind of conversation. The walls are clean, the furniture is ordinary. A table, a few chairs, a lamp that gives off soft yellow light. If someone walked in without context, they would think nothing important ever happens here. No one is raising their voice. No one is making a scene. There is no visible chaos. The door is locked from the inside. No one knocks. You are not here to move anything. You are not here to check numbers. You are not here to handle some small piece of the operation yourself. You are here because people need to be managed. That is what power becomes at this level. Not action, not speed, not even money, people. At this level, everything runs through them. Schedules, decisions, outcomes, mistakes, loyalty, fear, silence, pressure. All of it passes through human hands before it ever reaches you. And that changes the nature of the risk entirely. Money is no longer the main variable. The system is stable enough for that. The flow exists, the machine moves, the structure has weight. The real question becomes something much harder to measure. Who holds under pressure? You listen more than you speak. That is one of the first things that changes. At earlier levels, you wanted answers. Now you want reactions. You watch how people sit, how quickly they respond, how long they hesitate before agreeing. You notice who avoids eye contact when certain topics come up, who leans forward too quickly, who tries too hard to sound certain, who jokes when the room gets tense, who repeats back what you said because they want you to think they understood it. Because certainty in this world is rarely pure. Sometimes it is confidence. Sometimes it is performance. Sometimes it is fear wearing a better suit. That is the hidden rule here. It is not about who is capable when things are easy. It is about who remains predictable when things start to break. You begin to think in scenarios. If something goes wrong, who panics first? If someone is cornered, who starts talking? If a situation stretches longer than expected, who holds the line and who starts looking for a way out? If pressure enters the room, who becomes smaller? Who becomes louder? Who becomes dangerous? You build your decisions around those answers. Not around what people say about themselves. Not around what they promise when the room is calm. Around what you believe they will become when the floor starts moving beneath them. And slowly, without saying it out loud, you stop trusting people completely. Not because they are bad, not because they are weak, because they are human. That includes everyone, even the ones closest to you, especially them. That is the part you do not expect. You think power will help you separate the dangerous from the safe, the useful from the unreliable, the loyal from the temporary. But the higher you go, the more you realize people are not fixed categories. They change under pressure. They change with money. They change when they feel ignored. They change when they feel trapped. They change when they believe they have been promised a version of life they are not receiving fast enough. You stop asking whether people are good. That question becomes too simple. You start asking what they might do under the wrong conditions. And once your mind starts working that way, it does not stay inside the system. It follows you home. You find yourself editing what you say, even in conversations that have nothing to do with work. You leave details out. You simplify stories. You create distance in places where there used to be none. Not because it does not feel like isolation. It feels like discipline. That is the lie power tells you. That distance is wisdom. That silence is maturity. That emotional control is the same thing as safety. And for a while, you believe it because it works. Things stay contained. People learn the boundaries. You become harder to read, harder to reach, harder to surprise. But there is a cost. There always is. You stop being fully present anywhere, not in a room, not at dinner, not in the middle of a conversation with someone who only wants the simple version of you back. A person can be sitting across from you, telling you about something ordinary, something human, something that should not feel dangerous at all, and some part of your mind is still elsewhere, still calculating, still measuring tone, still noticing what is missing. That is the emotional bill of power. You can influence more outcomes, but you lose the ability to stand beside people without scanning them. And then one situation forces the truth into the open. Someone you relied on becomes unstable. Not loudly, not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would notice right away. Just enough for you to see the shift, a delay where there should not be one, a tone that does not match the words. A small inconsistency that does not fit the pattern you had come to trust. Nothing big enough to accuse. Nothing clean enough to prove, but enough. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That person is no longer just a person. No longer just a history of useful decisions. No longer just someone who has been there long enough to feel safe. They become a liability inside the system. And the realization lands colder than anything you felt at the lower levels. Because at level 1, the system felt dangerous. At level 3, the street felt dangerous. At level 5, distance felt dangerous. But now the danger has a face you know, a voice you recognize. A person who once made things easier and now makes every calculation heavier. At this level, you are not afraid of losing money. You are not even afraid of things going wrong. You are afraid of people. Because people are the only part of the system you can never fully control. That is the truth reversal of power. The higher you rise, the less you fear the outside world. And the more you fear the people standing close enough to touch what you built. And when you reach a point where there is too much at stake to leave exposed, that is when you start building something designed to protect it. Level 7. Protection. You build a life that looks clean. Sunday morning feels different now. The air is lighter. The noise is softer. Everything around you moves at a slower, more acceptable pace. There is sunlight on the floor. Real sunlight. Not the blue glow of a phone in a parked car. Not the yellow light of a locked room at 1:14 in the morning. Not the hard flash of storefront glass in your eyes. Just sunlight, falling across a clean room, landing on furniture that looks like it belongs to someone with nothing to hide. You are dressed in a way that fits the environment. Clean lines, neutral colors, nothing too loud, nothing that draws attention. Nothing that suggests anything unusual. From the outside, your life makes sense. That is the point. There are routines now, places you go that have names, addresses, business hours. Conversations that stay within the boundaries people expect. You show up where you are supposed to. You leave when it is appropriate. You answer questions with the right amount of detail, not too much, not too little, just enough for people to move on. You exist in a way that does not create questions. That is not accidental. It is constructed. At this level, the focus shifts completely. It is no longer about growth. It is no longer about expansion. It is no longer about seeing how far the system can move. It is about making what you have difficult to touch, difficult to question, difficult to take apart. The word people use from the outside is security, but from inside the life, it feels more like architecture. Everything has to hold. The story has to hold. The money has to hold. The relationships have to hold. The version of you that walks into public has to match the version people expect to see. Income appears where it should. Paper trails exist in forms that can survive attention. Assets move into structures that look normal enough not to invite curiosity. Everything is positioned to withstand scrutiny, even if that scrutiny never comes. Because the rule here is simple. Keeping what you built matters more than building it in the first place. And the only way to keep it is to make it look like it was always meant to be there. That is the quiet genius of protection. It does not look dramatic. It looks boring. It looks respectable. It looks like clean paperwork, ordinary appointments, polished surfaces, dinner reservations, polite greetings, the right kind of address, the right kind of clothing, the right kind of silence. You begin to live inside that version of your life. At first, it feels like relief, and maybe part of it is. Things are quieter, safer, more controlled. You can walk into rooms without calculating every exit. You can speak without measuring every single word. You can let a Sunday morning feel like a Sunday morning for almost a full minute before your mind starts moving again. But over time, something else replaces that relief. Distance. A different kind than before. Not the distance between you and danger, the distance between you and truth. You are playing a role so consistently that it starts to replace the person who created it. Conversations become easier but less real. Relationships feel stable but thinner. People smile at you in ways that tell you they believe the version they are seeing, and instead of feeling comfort, you feel a strange kind of grief. Because they are not wrong. That version is real now. It pays bills. It attends events. It knows how to answer questions. It stands in photographs. It has routines. It has a place in the world. But it is not the whole story. And the whole story has nowhere to go. You notice how often you choose the version of the truth that is easiest to maintain instead of the one that is most accurate. Because accuracy creates risk. And risk is the one thing you are no longer allowed to take. That is the emotional bill of protection. You finally build a life that looks clean, but the cost is that the clean version becomes the only version allowed to survive. Then one day, it becomes clear in a way you cannot ignore. You are surrounded by people who know you, but not really. They know the version of you that fits, the version that belongs in this world, the version that can be explained in a sentence or two without raising questions. He is disciplined. He worked hard. He made smart moves. He built something. He came from a difficult place and figured it out. People love stories like that because they are clean. They are simple. They let everyone feel inspired without getting too close to the machinery underneath. But everything that built that version stays unspoken. Not because you are actively hiding every second of the day. That would be easier to understand. It is worse than that. There is simply no place for the full truth to exist. No room in a Sunday morning. No room at a dinner table. No room in a casual question from someone who thinks they are asking something harmless. No room in the life you built to protect yourself. And the realization does not come with panic. It comes quietly. Like a door closing in another part of the house. You cannot tell the full truth about your life to anyone. Not without tearing down the very structure that made this life possible. That is the truth reversal of protection. The life that looks safest can become the one where the truth has the least oxygen. And once that settles in, the question changes again. It is no longer about how much you can hold on to. It becomes something deeper, harder to avoid. What exactly did all of this cost you? And what is it for? Level 8. Legacy. You can leave, you can't undo. It is 3:02 in the morning, and your eyes open before you understand why. The room is still. No sound from outside, no movement in the house, no vibration from your phone, no footsteps, no voice. Just the kind of silence that should mean everything is fine. But your body is already awake, your mind is already running. There is nothing specific that pulled you out of sleep. No alert, no message, no sudden danger. Just a thought that did not fully form, but refused to disappear. You lie there for a few seconds, staring into the dark, waiting for your body to settle back down. It does not. It rarely does anymore. This is what it feels like when the system is no longer around you, but still inside you. You can step away from the structure. You can reduce your involvement. You can move your life into places that look and feel separate from everything you were part of. A different house. A different schedule. Different clothes. Different conversations. Different names on the doors you walk through. From the outside, it appears like distance. And for a while, maybe you call it that too. Distance. A new chapter. A cleaner life. A way out. But distance is not the same as separation, because the way you think does not revert. You still scan situations without meaning to. You still measure people in terms of risk. You still calculate outcomes before conversations even begin. You still notice exits, tone, hesitation, the small mismatch between what someone says and what their body seems to know. You still carry the awareness of how quickly things can shift, how a small change can ripple into something irreversible, how a harmless-looking opportunity can become the first step into a life someone does not understand until it is too late. That is the rule at this level. You can remove yourself from the system physically, but you cannot remove what the system turned you into. And that realization comes with a cost harder to define than anything that came before it. At the lower levels, the costs had names: debt, fear, risk, lies, pressure, isolation, responsibility. At this level, the cost is identity. You start to question which version of you is real, the one that built everything, or the one that lives inside what was built. The one that learned to read pressure, silence, and weakness, or the one that tries to exist in a world that does not require that level of awareness. The one who made the choices, or the one still explaining them to himself years later? You notice it in small moments. How you pause before answering simple questions. How you avoid details without thinking. How you give people clean versions of messy years. How you hold back parts of your past, not because you are actively trying to deceive someone in that exact moment, but because there is no way to explain them without changing how you are seen. And after a while, the distance is not only between you and other people. It is between you and yourself. That is the emotional bill of legacy. You can survive the system, you can profit from it, you can rise through it, you can even step away from it. But you still have to live with the person who was shaped by it. Then one moment makes it undeniable. You see someone at the very beginning, not literally the same person, not the same street, not the same room, not the same exact problem, but the posture is familiar. The hesitation before saying yes, the calculation behind the eyes, the tiredness of someone who has been carrying too many numbers for too long. The quiet acceptance of something that feels small enough to justify. You recognize it instantly, because you were there once. You remember that first gap, the gap between what you had and what you needed. You remember how quickly the mind works when the pressure is financial. How fast a person can make a decision when the alternative is going back to the same impossible math. You remember how it did not feel like becoming someone else. It felt like solving one problem, just one. And in that moment, the entire structure becomes clear in a way it never was when you were inside it. Everything above exists because something like that first moment keeps happening, over and over again. A person reaches the edge. A number does not work. A life becomes too tight. A system offers something fast, simple, and perfectly timed. And by the time the person understands what they accepted, they are already connected to something larger than the original problem. You are no longer part of the entry point. You are far removed from it. But you understand now that the system does not need you to continue. It only needs the next person to begin. That is the truth reversal of legacy. Leaving does not end the machine. It only proves the machine can survive without you. And once you see that, the question you have been avoiding settles fully into your chest. There was never a clean ending waiting for you. There was only a point where you decided how much of the cost you were willing to carry. And the cycle does not stop with you. There is always a moment where it begins. Not loud, not obvious, not something anyone else would notice if they were standing right there. Just a small shift, a conversation that seems ordinary, an opportunity that fits too neatly into a problem that has been sitting unresolved for too long. From the outside, it looks harmless. From the inside, it feels necessary. Someone stands there, not fully aware of what they are stepping into. They weigh it quickly. Not because they are careless, not because they are evil, not because they woke up wanting to ruin their life, but because the feeling of being invisible to systems that only seem to notice you when they want money from you. They say yes, and nothing changes immediately. That is the part that makes it work. Because if everything changed at once, no one would stay. If the one lie that becomes a second life. One responsibility that becomes a system. One system that becomes an identity. By the time you realize how far you have moved, the first version of you already feels like someone you knew a long time ago. No single person holds it together. No single person can end it. It continues because it is designed to continue. Because there is always someone standing at that first moment, facing a choice that does not feel like a choice at all. And they will make the same decision you did. Not because they are the same as you, but because the structure that led you there still exists. And maybe that is the final cost. Not the money, not the fear, not even the years you cannot fully explain. On silence, on unpaid bills, on invisible desperation, on the tiny gap between what someone needs and what the legitimate world is willing to give them in time. And somewhere, right now, before sunrise, someone is standing in front of a counter, looking at a number they cannot cover. Their fingers tap once on the edge of a plastic tray, then stop. They think about putting one item back, just one. As if that would make the number smaller in a way that matters. It would not. Then the space behind them changes. A voice comes from just over their shoulder, not friendly, not hostile, just certain. It gives them a location, a time, something simple enough for their brain to accept before their instincts can argue. And when the number is spoken, it lands exactly where it is supposed to land. In the gap. The gap the world left open. They turn. They do not ask what it is. Not because they are brave. Not because they do not care. But because some part of them already understands that the answer would not change anything. So they say yes in the smallest way possible. A nod. Barely visible. Easy to pretend it did not mean anything. And that is how it starts again. Not with a decision that feels dangerous, but with one that feels efficient.
Subscribe, because this is not a story about crime. This is a story about how system pull people in and what they take in return.